We feature work that was done in community. Like, this is work that was made in a group environment because we see the value of these art encounters. We know that they are beneficial to people's social and emotional health.
Hello, door openers, and welcome to Chats with Caring Creatives, an initiative of Open the Doors. This is a segment where we bring you the heart, the soul, and the minds of some great creative practitioners working in the aged care space. I'm here today with Rhiannon Tui.
And I'm here with Maury Boise Barlin, and we are speaking with the wonderful Evan Johnson today, who's the director of Ruth's Table, which is part of a parent group called Front Porch. And I believe that they're under the subheading of creative engagement.
So, Evan, what is it that you do?
I'm based in California and I'm a creative. I've been full-time, working as an arts educator, doing drama classes. I'm a playwright. I love engaging communities while I make live performances. So that kind of led to working with older adults, and then started working full time with older adults during the pandemic. Prior to that, I had a theater group called the Cosmic Elders Theater Ensemble that I met with once a week. They're still going strong, which is so meaningful and sweet that they've connected that way. And they're an awesome group of older people making original theater here in San Francisco. I do comedy still. That's kind of my performance language these days. I have I guess you'd say, an alter ego named Martha T. Lipton. She is a overly confident drag character that I have. And yeah, I started doing that because I moved to San Francisco. There's a very large, thriving, diverse drag scene here.
I was just sort of wondering, as you talk about that, so like in your work, which we'll talk more about, is there space for the elders you work alongside to express their sexuality as well? Is that something that you work on?
Certainly their identity. And I think here in the Bay Area, kind of the counterculture is so much a part of our city's identity. So there's plenty of people who are like proud progressives or proud kind of outspoken, folks that were kind of a part of the anti-war movement, folks in the kind of disability justice movement. There's all kinds of kind of wonderful, spirited kind of activist spirit out here in the Bay.
There's been some talk recently with the community reclaiming the word queer. Mm-hmm. And some elders I've worked with have had great difficulty with that because they come from a time when queer was meant, was life-threatening and violence perpetrated against them. Have you got anything that you feel around reclaiming the word queer for the younger generation and what it means to the older generation who actually fear the word?
I moved to San Francisco in 2009, and I had not been using that word myself. I bristled a little bit when I heard it because it was a word that was kind of lobbed against me as a younger person. I knew that it was something that was part of the climate out here. And then I kind of got connected to, ACT UP and Queer Nation and some of the activism and the political movement as HIV and AIDS was, rampaging through the community. I think that was, on into the 90s. I think there was some wonderful rebellion that happened where people were angry at the government's poor handling of the disease. And there was a lot of people who were kind of wearing their combat boots and taken to the streets and, we're here, we're queer, get used to it. That was kind of the mindset. When I connected to that history and met more people, mostly Gen X at the time, who were really using that word. And I think now it does get used more as an umbrella term, is how I see it. But just like with anything, language wise, someone can let you know that that's not something that applies to them, or it doesn't resonate with them, or they'd prefer if you didn't use it. So I think we all kind of have that autonomy and can let people know, I think, when when something like that doesn't fit. I'm no longer sensitive to the use of it.
So you went into some sort of training, as you took it more seriously. Can you talk a little bit about that sort of training that you did?
Yeah, I was 14 and I got a scholarship to go to Cal Arts, which is a school in Los Angeles here. And there was a bunch of teachers from this funny school called Del Arte that kind of came into that program, curious about those people. And there was something really mystical and different about them, the way that they seemed to know each other really well, and their approach to theater making, how they kind of all wore many hats and just seemed completely, brilliant. and that they all kind of leaned on each other's strengths and had very different skill sets. And I just found it really interesting. So I ended up, after spending some time in Sacramento and doing some local theater, then going to Del Arte and spending a year there. And then kind of after that, really had a marvelous time kind of bouncing around the States doing projects with alumni that I had, or people connected to that kind of network of the alumni network at Del Arte, and did that for a few years. And then before coming to San Francisco, it really shaped kind of how I make theater, how I thought about theater, because it really sort of was against the grain. I think there's a lot of emphasis on, the commercial side of theater. Most four-year schools, for example, you're going to leave with your monologues and your songs ready to go, and you're going to go out to those auditions and you're going to wow the casting directors and maybe get a job. But Del Arte had an approach where they were really fostering the actor as the creator of the work. So we were every week doing performance labs, and that meant we were, putting on something new every week and rehearsing with different groups, different combos. So we just did that all year long. And then I think it made sense in a certain way, because it's the theater then is really of those people. And they really encouraged us to think about the role of the arts in community, especially because they're in a small town. Places like that, what can theater bring? What can theater do that other art forms can't do? Or how can we respond to a current event, or make use of a space that's really maybe non-traditional and make it come to life in a creative way like that? And so they performed out in the forest, and they did things in the town square, and they had festivals and parades, and it was just a different way of kind of being an artist that I had encountered before.
And so you all gather around Ruth's table. This takes place around Ruth's table and on Ruth's table, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
Who attends these then? So you've got the community of elders, but like, is it an intergenerational activity? Like, how does it work? What happens? Like, what happens on a day at around Ruth's table?
Yeah. We're open Tuesday through Friday every week, and we have classes every day. There's a Chinese poetry class, which is really a small program catering to the Chinese elders that live at Bethany Center. So it's a Cantonese poetry class. And what's wonderful is this language that kind of is an old-fashioned language now. It's not the tradition, not the national language of China anymore. For them to go and reconnect with that language is very meaningful. And the teacher who's leading it is kind of a generation younger than them, and it's really a sweet connection that they have. Yeah, then we've got a creative reuse class where all the materials are items that would be otherwise thrown away. There's a place in the city called Scrap, which is a creative kind of resource center where you can buy a big giant Ziploc bag full of buttons for $5 or whatever. So we get a lot of our materials from Scrap. Ruth Asawa was actually a founding member of Scrap, because back at that time it was part of the same sort of impetus of getting artists to start teaching and making an impact in the community in that way. I think it was kind of all a part of her thinking. And so we do draw a lot of inspiration from that. When I meet somebody who's an artist but has never taught a workshop before, because they might come in and check us out and think, oh, I might exhibit my art here. I'm working on my art exhibition. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm an artist. I want to get my work on the walls. And then I'll say to them, we're a little bit different here. This is a place where we feature work that was done in community. Like, this is work that was made in a group environment, because we see the value of these art encounters. We know that they are beneficial to people's social and emotional health. There's a great deal of evidence to that point. And, I think interacting with people through the arts that you've never met before, it's a cool thing that happens when you share an experience. There might be those little butterflies when you walk in and seeing somebody that you don't know, someone who doesn't look like you or talk like you, but then doing an art activity with them for an hour or two, you leave like you know each other, your old friends. Certainly there's some kind of barrier that gets passed through. So
am I right in assuming then that not only do you have this creative space and creative activities, we're also talking about breaking bread together and having cups of tea and coffee and social interaction outside of the art form? Is that part of what's important?
It's funny you say that. That's actually one of the things I have done consistently. I'd say, performing, and then coffee and tea has been a part of my life. I worked as a barista for years and years.
There we go. Here it is.
So everywhere I've gone, it's like I've got to have a little hot, water boiler. I've got to bring my setup. So yeah, even when I was working with elders at an assisted living community in Oakland, one of the things I did there was install a little espresso machine and I turned an area of the community into kind of a cafe that they could visit me. And I had a little open and close sign, and I'd pop out when the open sign was up, and I put on my apron and I hung out behind the espresso machine and put a little music on with my Alexa. Having somebody serve you something nice and beautiful with a little chocolate sprinkles or whatever, that little treat. I noticed how wonderfully rich those little moments were, that they can find their special mug, or there's which flavor of tea they want, and have it made just the way they like, because I do think those little touches matter. They help somebody, they certainly help me, like, relax in an environment and just kind of land.
Evan, just as someone who, I also work at like a day center, or a club Colina is what we're called. So it's very similar in a lot of ways to what you've been describing Ruth's Table is. But I would love to incorporate more of this acting and theatrical aspect into some of the daily activities we do. So I would love some advice, because the most that I have been able to do is charades, which is kind of acting. And that's always fun. But
It's
if you
great.
have any advice or suggestions from someone who's not an actor, and anyone who's listening that maybe would want to run some of these kind of activities, where should we start? What do we do?
Oh goodness. Well, I think you can get out a lot of leverage out of creating make-believe environments, even just temporary ones, like putting chairs in a formation like a car, and handing somebody a frisbee and saying you're the driver, that kind of thing. Or like, two chairs together, three chairs together, and saying it's a park bench, and handing someone a newspaper and saying you start on stage, this other person's going to start off stage, and then just see what happens. I mean, I think a lot of what clues people into how to behave is what kind of environment is set for them. And so I think if you can just in a temporary way adjust the environment, and then give people permission to enter. I like to say little things like, the word entrance is spelt the same as the word entrance. So think about how you can entrance us with your entrance, or these little tiny things. I think it's the same way when I was thinking of activities also with folks with memory issues, memory challenges. I remember getting a hot air popcorn. It's like we could do it in the microwave, but there's something about like the object itself, like rising full of little popcorns and making the whole place smell good. And it's like anything you can do that's going to help people sense that something's happening. When it's a space that people can come and go, kind of like with Commedia dell'arte, you want something that can capture someone's attention and sustain their attention. And I think the biggest thing you can, if you're a rec leader or a facilitator, is that kind of signaling to someone that you're glad to see them, and there's some kind of anticipation around what's about to happen. So I think those two steps are really important. Like, it's so good to see you, like each individual person, and there's something about to happen, like just wait here a minute, or like, oh, we got to get this chair set, or let's just see if we can get one more person when they come around the corner, but there's something about the anticipation and the joy of seeing somebody. And then once you've got that, I think, yeah, you're on your way to kind of beginning something, and that could start with anything. I like to think of scene, starters. Like you could have every idea you have, you could put it in a jar, write it on a little piece of paper as just a starter. And it could be a starting line that gets said. It could be, the title of the scene. It could be an idea for a character. Any starter can usually be enough to just look at something with other people, and then they're going to have ideas. They're going to want to jump in. They're going to want to try that on. But yeah, that kind of approach of just sort of beginning something, and then you start getting ideas together, thinking, really reminding yourselves that we don't have to have all the ideas. Like, we're going to have ideas together once we start.
You just talked about the word anticipation. It got me wondering, is it anticipation that is missing in long-term and residential aged care for our elders, do you think?
In my view, yes. I think that the thing we need to look at around residential living is creating a sense of novelty. And I don't mean like in a can, like novelty, like a bunch of decorations that that suddenly make it the holiday because we got those decorations up. It's not always so simple. I think just a fact that today, that kind of like, it's good to see you, and we're about to do something, that unexpected thing is actually what you want to move toward. The choice to join being something very significant. It's great to have you here. I'm so glad you're here. And you made it. Come on in. Those invitations are really key, that someone feels a sense of like permission to be in the space. That felt like successful to me. I felt like the connections with the elders in those spaces, it felt like a genuine sense of possibility. And I enjoyed that working there. And I think they enjoyed that living there.
Was there an experience or an interaction that maybe you had with someone, an elder, creating some artwork that maybe went wrong? And did you learn any lessons from that?
I think I remember a particular moment when one of the elders in the group I was working with and I had kind of saw things differently. And I remember, in retrospect, looking back at that moment, I guess what I can glean is that I lost a certain curiosity in that interaction and was really kind of holding on to my point of view a little strongly. And I guess it's funny because it's kind of one of those like take your own advice kind of thing. Because when I would work with young people, I would see disagreements happen, or sort of the process getting stuck. And sometimes it'd be like we're making our own scenes, and there's a timer. We're going to show each other in 10 minutes or whatever. Be some kind of a like pressure cooker moment. And I would notice a group was stuck and they weren't up on their feet or they weren't working. And I go over. I would say to the kids, you got to remain curious about each other's ideas. You got to see, don't get too stuck on what you're doing. Because I really think that stubbornness is sort of like passion that has become too compacted. Then it starts to be like blinders on, you can't really see anything but your own version. And I would take my own advice and say that in retrospect, that's what happened with this one elder who ended up leaving and not coming back to my class. It's like, I think what I've learned, that humility and curiosity and gratitude being really kind of central to finding joy in the work. Those things are really precious, actually, and like something really needing to be protected and kind of intentional, being intentional about maintaining those three things.
Do you think that the arts has the capacity in elder care to break down the silos that exist between the designations? Breaking down the silos in terms of between our RNs, our registered nurses, and our ENs, our care staff, our recreational therapists or lifestyle team members, our leaders, and then the artists coming in and going, oh, what's going on here? Is it possible for artists or creatives to help break down those silos?
I think so. There's so many artists that are seeking space and recognition, a moment to share what they do, or a place to kind of maybe make some noise. The assisted living community had a back garden, kind of with a pavilion, and there was a neighborhood teenage band that I said they could rehearse out back. We all benefit from walking into a space and there's beautiful music playing. The arts are so amazing and can be and don't always have to be produced in such a traditional way. I think if you are having an open house and the community is invited in, it's like, bring in some spoken word, bring in a dancer, bring in do something different. Have a show, have a little festival of locally made student films. There's a lot to be said for the power of a spotlight. I think the arts and culture, even at large, is like there's such an opportunity to imbue more of that and to create a place that can feel much more active and dynamic and unpredictable and exciting, and something that everyone can feel proud of and feel delight and excitement. I think that ideally would be kind of how a place that is serving as people's home, as people's village, as people's community. I think ideally that's what you can cultivate.
What's one myth about your work that you'd like to change?
I think a lot of people think, and maybe there's some truth to this, but that actors they don't live in reality, or they're delusional, or they're, attention starved, or needing approval or something. And that may all be absolutely true. Actually, I don't know if that is a myth. No, just kidding. That delusion, whatever that is, I think can help inspire to commit yourself to something that's make-believe. That's not so dissimilar from, taking a risk in another way. And I think when people create together, there's something like optimistic about that, because you are like embarking on something that you don't know will work or not. But the fact that others are with you, there's something like genuinely exciting about that. Maybe the myth is that it's, a terrible, terrible thing to not live in reality. And actually, maybe it's okay to escape reality sometime in a healthy way and in a controlled way. And building that reality with other people is a lot of fun and feels really uplifting. You're going out on a limb with other people, and they're there to catch you.
How do you feel you've opened the doors in your work?
I feel like I've opened the doors with enthusiasm. I think I think enthusiasm has been really key. The genuine desire to engage other people and to play along with them, to invite them along. I think that is the sort of secret sauce to what I've been able to do.
And if you were to train someone to do what you did, like, you know, if you were going to get somebody and bring them in, what do you think are the two most important qualities that you would look for in that person?
Sensitivity, and resourcefulness. Being able to work with what's in front of you and make full use of what's available.
Thank you so much, Evan, for your time today and sharing your beautiful creative approach. And, you know, really want to thank you for all you do out there. Connecting the community is really what you do. And I just want to say that I think you walk a noble path. You give a precious gift.
Thank you, Maury.
And thank you, Evan, for today. It was amazing to hear about Ruth's Table and all the fantastic theatrical things you're doing with Cosmic Elders and all the programs. Just inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
And before we go, if you work in the creative aging space and would like to share your work with us globally, please get in contact with us at otd@communityhomeaustralia.org.
Over and out.